Welcome to the series of teachings on Is God Violent? Why this series? Millions of people are turned off God and Jesus because of all the violence attributed to God in the Old Testament and even in some passages in the New Testament, especially the book of Revelation. Millions are turned off. How could God be love and yet dump all this violence on them? There's a disconnect. And so people are just leaving Christianity by the millions, and millions more say we don't want anything to do with this God of the Old Testament and in some passages in the New Testament. For example, look at the flood. It looks like global genocide. In Genesis 6:7 in the English Standard Version, we read this. So the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land. Global genocide. I will blot out. How are we supposed to understand passages like this and reconcile it with a God of love? I totally understand why people are not interested in the God of the Bible. What I'm going to present is 40 years of research into this idea of violence in the Bible. You see, the book of Genesis that records the flood was written 3,500 years ago to an ancient Middle Eastern tribal culture walking through a desert. They used to think differently, speak differently, see God differently. They had a particular ancient Hebrew worldview. Unless and until we understood how they interpreted the flood, we are going to transfer and impose our modern ideas back into what the Bible says. What am I getting at? Where it says, I will blot out man from the face of the earth, to us, that means that God is the direct active agent of violence. But that phrase was not understood like that by the ancient Israelites 3,500 years ago. Moses wrote this story. That's common knowledge. When he wrote it, he was just about to die, and the children of Israel were going to go into the promised land. And so he wrote up his first 5 books of the Bible 3,500 years ago. It was for them. Moses wrote up the story of the flood for ancient Israel so that they could understand it. How did ancient Israel understand the phrase, I will blot out mankind? We know what that means today, but is this what it means back then? That's what we're going to do in this series of teachings. We are going to go back 3,500 years and get into the minds of ancient Israel. Let's study how they understood God, how they understood these phrases. Did they understand that phrase that God was sending the flood? It looks like that to us, but is that how they saw it, or is something else going on? You're going to hear me say the following thing many times throughout this series. The ancient Hebrew worldview about God was this. Since he is the creator, he has the right to accept all responsibility for everything that happens. If you were good and blessing came, God did it. If you were bad and blessing came, God did it. If you were good and bad came, God did it. Everything in the ancient Hebrew worldview is, since God is the creator, the buck stops with him. So absolutely everything was attributed to God, good or bad. Whether he sent the flood or not, it will attribute it back to him, ultimately. Why? What God allows, since he is creator, is attributed to him doing. What God allows, because he is the creator, is ultimately attributed back to him, as if he did it. That's the ancient Hebrew worldview. And I'm going to present that God did not send the flood. Even though it seems in English, he did. What's the worldview we're going to look at? What God allows is described as him actively doing. I'm going to give you case after case after case to prove that this is how they saw things. So God gets the responsibility for everything because he made everything. Get ready for a spiritual roller coaster ride. I hope this blesses you.